This webinar is part of a series that reflects between Noni Lasso and Emily Phillips Galloway from Harvard and Vanderbilt University, respectively, and the New York State Education Department. In this webinar, I'll be discussing the fundamentals of advanced literacy instruction for leaders and their teams working in school districts serving our increasingly linguistically and culturally diverse learner population. For those of you who might be new to this topic, additional information can be found through the New York State Education Department website, the website of the Office of Bilingual Education and World Languages, and the Regional Bilingual Education Resource Networks. We conclude this webinar by providing links to additional resources. Today's webinar focuses specifically on supporting the day-to-day instruction that all students receive in order to move students towards what we call advanced literacies. These are skills and competencies that enable communication, spoken and written, in increasingly diverse ways and with increasingly diverse audiences. Advanced literacies promote the understanding and use of text for a variety of purposes. At their core is a need for a strong command of language, both oral and written. Moving classrooms, especially those serving linguistically diverse populations, towards advanced literacies demands fundamental shifts in the way we view teaching and learning. Most importantly, we need to focus our attention on strengthening the instructional core, the day-to-day instruction that all students receive. This is actually rarely where we concentrate our efforts when faced with large numbers of students who need to become stronger readers and writers. Yet, this is where our students spend the majority of the school day and where our efforts to improve students' advanced literacies can have the most impact. In thinking about cultivating advanced literacies among many more learners, I'd like to kick off today's webinar by discussing two key shifts in how we think about meeting the needs of our learners through core instruction and strong curriculum for improving the day-to-day instruction that all learners receive. These shifts were identified over 5 years of embedded work with leaders and their teams in one of the largest urban school districts in the country. It was through this work with leaders that we came to identify ways in which the existing instructional model would need to move or shift to accommodate the changing learning needs of students in our classrooms. The first shift pertains to how we use intervention to support the struggling population. One of our observations early on in our work with principals was that they were often operating through a system in which students with underdeveloped literacy skills were supported through intervention alone. Why did we focus on this picture? What is it that caught our eye? Well, this approach meant the day-to-day instruction wasn't tailored towards the population. Instead, their needs were met around the perimeter through a series of supplemental supports. This became a cumbersome and overwhelming system in which many students were either receiving interventions and/or queued up for intervention support. We therefore focus on a shift to a stronger instructional core by customizing it to the needs of the majority of students. Today, I'll be discussing this shift in greater detail. The other shift I'll discuss today pertains to the practitioner's curriculum work. One of our other early observations was that practitioners were both designing and delivering instruction, and this holds true today. For many, this is an exhausting cycle, and of course, very few teachers have been trained as curriculum developers. We suggest instead that for leaders aiming to improve daily teaching and learning for all students, including multilingual learners, English language learners, a shared curriculum, one professionally developed with all pieces, text sets, units of study, scope and sequence, lesson plans, should be used to support daily teaching and learning. This allows practitioners to really focus on their role as instructional and pedagogical experts, delivering strong instruction from day to day and getting to know their students as individual learners. If we think about these two shifts in terms of teaching and learning environments, what are leaders focusing on? Well, they're thinking about the quality of day-to-day instruction that students receive. They're thinking about the degree to which learning is coherent and cohesive across an academic year and from year to year as a result of using a shared platform for teaching and learning. While we can view these as various aspects that leaders are focused on, they're very much interconnected, and each of these has a fundamental role to play in supporting high-quality literacy instruction. With these two important shifts in the landscape as a backdrop, the need for a stronger instructional core and shared curricula, in this webinar, We focus on an architecture to cultivate advanced literacy skills among all learners, including learners from linguistically diverse backgrounds. This architecture features what we call the hallmarks of advanced literacies. These are elements of high-quality curriculum and instruction that bring to life a cycle of teaching and learning that develops advanced literacies among all students. So, how do we know if our approach to the instructional core, including curriculum, is strong? In other words, if it is providing that high-quality instruction we know all students, including multilingual learners and English language learners, so desperately need and deserve? Well, there are 4 hallmarks that we believe can be used by leaders and their teams to design the instructional architecture and to identify within high-quality, day-to-day instruction in classrooms. Over the course of any given unit of study or set of lessons across a few days, we would expect to see these 4 hallmarks in action. The first hallmark is that students are working with a variety of texts that feature big ideas and rich content. The second is that the classroom environment is rich with discussion and language-building opportunities that is serving 2 functions: to develop students' understanding and use of language, and to develop their content and world knowledge. The third hallmark is that writing is used as a platform to build language and knowledge, and that students are engaging in both extended writing throughout instruction each and every day, not just in one burst or long period, but throughout their days as well. And finally, the fourth hallmark is that students are engaged in the study of a small set of very high-utility vocabulary words. In addition to the 4 hallmarks, a fifth is in service of implementation, to strengthen curriculum and instruction via the other 4 hallmarks. It is the use of school-wide instructional protocols that guide how students and teachers work together to read a variety of texts, engage in discussion, write, and acquire new language and vocabulary. In this webinar, we take up hallmarks 1 and 3, focusing on reading and writing. Our second webinar in this series examines hallmarks 2 and 4, focusing on discussion and vocabulary. It is important to recognize that each of the hallmarks demands attention to both the instructional architecture, the curriculum, and the instructional delivery, or pedagogy. For each hallmark, we discuss its relevance to curriculum and instruction. And so, let's really concretize the 2 hallmarks in focus in this webinar. The first hallmark addresses the use of a variety of texts that teach big ideas and rich content. In the broadest sense, a text is anything that can be read for meaning: printed texts, digital texts, blogs, movies, podcasts, visual texts, pictures, maps, diagrams, figures, infographics, and even phenomenon-based inquiries and modeling activities. Interpreted through this lens, the first hallmark suggests that students be engaged in reading a variety of different texts as part of learning. When we think about big ideas, we're talking about ideas that are multifaceted, so they're conceptually abstract, and they lend themselves to rich discussions around questions that have no single clear answer. They're engaging. They're relevant to the interests and experiences of multilingual learners and English language learners, and their peers. And they tap into students' desires to be part of and to understand the worlds beyond school, beyond the confines of the classroom. They're content-based, so they can be explored in science, social studies, and the arts, and English language learners should return to aspects of these ideas throughout schooling. An example of a big idea that we might tackle as part of a high-quality instructional unit is the idea of segregation and educational equity. This is a topic that's multi-layered and can be revisited. When we think about the alignment of our instructional design with this first hallmark, we often think of the use of a variety of texts that feature these big ideas and this rich content, and we envision students actively working with and processing these texts. It often means that we're spending more than one day with a single text to really develop students' deep understanding of the concepts it presents. The benefits of this accrue over a series of lessons in which multiple texts on a single topic or concept are read. And so, students are exposed to many perspectives and lenses that enrich their content understanding. The reason for this is because the topics featured in these texts are multifaceted. In addition, students need to feel that reading tasks are meaningful, authentic, and engaging if they are to become the engaging, critical, and voracious readers that schools hope to create. We suggest that this requires having a reason to read, to answer a question that is meaningful or engage in an authentic task, like debating a controversial idea with peers or producing an editorial for a local newspaper or blog. These tasks, when motivated by rich questions that are important to youth, support reading as an authentic knowledge-building task. Topics may resonate because they are high interest to young people, or because they culturally resonate, allowing students to draw on their existing ideas of cultural and linguistic knowledge. In this sense, texts are both windows into worlds and ideas less familiar to our students, and mirrors through which we can see ourselves reflected. We encourage listeners to view reading and knowledge building as inextricably linked processes. While the field sometimes pits the teaching of reading skills and competencies against knowledge building, we argue that high-quality instruction necessarily involves both. Students require teaching that develops both the skills needed to read print on a page, to match sounds in oral language to print in order to read words, and to understand and make meaning from text. The skills that support text understanding include developing students' knowledge of the language of text, background knowledge of the text topic, and the strategic reader habits that support students to take action in order to make a text make sense by, for instance, rereading, summarizing, or self-questioning to check comprehension. What's important to consider here is that struggling readers are not struggling thinkers, and these opportunities to work with grade-level texts, as well as with texts on related topics at different reading levels, are essential to developing both conceptual knowledge and reading skills. This means purposefully selecting grade-level text segments and scaffolding all students' access to these segments as a way to provide opportunities for grade-level reading. In addition, students benefit from reading texts that are readily accessible. So, it goes without saying, then, that any curriculum necessarily includes a variety of texts. This ensures that students are exposed to ideas in ways that are engaging and allow deeper thinking and learning of content. Equally important in text selection is that texts represent a variety of cultures, beliefs, and perspectives as part of providing culturally responsive and sustaining instruction. We offer a set of look-fors in curriculum and instruction that are related to realizing this hallmark. Each of these help to establish the conditions that allow students to read text, to learn language and content. That's the first hallmark, focused on the text sets to set the stage for cultivating advanced literacy skills. So, let's turn our attention now to Hallmark 3, which is the use of extended writing as a platform to build language and knowledge. When we discuss Hallmark 3, which is the use of extended writing, we are again going to invoke the hallmarks and action cycle, which we believe supports students' knowledge of both topics and of language. Indeed, there is no fixed order to the hallmarks in a unit or lesson. Rather, we hope to see writing used across a unit in ways that meaningfully develop content understanding and knowledge deepening in our students. Often, when our students are reading for the purpose of gaining content knowledge, this is enriched by their discussion of the topic, and then through writing, where they apply both their knowledge of the topic and use of the language that relates to explaining that topic. This is when we start to see true mastery of both language and knowledge, which is why writing serves such a fundamental role in the read, talk, write cycle. When we talk about aligning our instruction with Hallmark 3, we expect to see students engaging in writing about text or on a topic or an issue with a very clear purpose. So, for example, they're writing to answer a text-based question or to take a perspective. And it's important that there is a structure in place to help them do this. It could be the use of a graphic organizer to structure their thinking before they write. In completing the organizer, students are encouraged to adopt language from the text and to present their ideas and their perspectives using this language. It's important to highlight that writing serves as a transfer task, one in which students take language from text and make it their own through the process of writing. Assignments should gradually require more extended writing, and we can imagine across a unit that the writing demands build gradually from writing a short response about our perspective on segregation, for example, and then having this culminate in the form of a larger project or essay in which students engage in extended writing. As with Hallmark 1, we offer a set of look-fors in curriculum and instruction that are related to realizing this hallmark. Each of these helps to establish the conditions that allow students to write as a forum for learning language and content. These look-fors or indicators of this hallmark can guide leaders and their teams as they seek to both select an instructional core and to support educators to teach in ways that support the development of writing skills for students. Implementing the hallmarks often demands adopting a shared platform or curriculum to drive teaching and learning, resulting in a more coherent and cohesive learning sequence. In fact, curriculums have a number of benefits for teachers and for learners. For our teachers, having a well-developed curriculum frees time to focus on instructional delivery. When teachers are not designing the instruction itself, they can spend time focusing instead on delivery. Research has also shown that good curriculum also serves an educative function. Ultimately, it provides formats for conducting a lesson and/or suggestions for how teachers might structure student participation. Over time, this educates teachers on new ways to structure learning. In addition, a shared curriculum allows for vertical and horizontal alignment. Having a shared curricular platform means that even without teacher collaboration, which is sometimes impossible, especially across grades, that from grade to grade, year to year, students receive similar instruction and instruction that builds upon itself, and that horizontally within a single grade, all children are receiving similar content and knowledge-building instructional opportunities from day to day. Curriculum also has benefits for students. It creates familiarity with a core set of learning routines, and it presents information in a predictable format, which, as I discussed previously, reduces the amount of attention that students need to divert from content and language mastery. When we think about the adoption of a curriculum, what we're really thinking about is how to free teachers up to focus on delivering and strengthening the instructional core. And so, we can't confuse curriculum materials with good teaching, but we can support good teaching with high-quality comprehensive curricular materials. For instructional leaders, the task is therefore twofold. They have to select high-quality curricular materials and then establish buy-in amongst their staff around the use of these materials. They need to ensure that the curriculum they've adopted is implemented with fidelity and adapted appropriately and consistently. They need a plan for the rollout and associated professional learning, and a process for making mid-course corrections. So, what makes a literacy curriculum high quality? Well, there are 3 things that leaders can look for. The first is that the hallmarks of advanced literacy are present within the structure of lessons and units to support learners and their teachers. In addition, curriculum should hold students to high expectations by including tasks and texts that are appropriately challenging given grade-level expectations. And teachers are provided with all supports, materials, and instructional guidelines to execute any lesson as written. Now, of course, curriculum will have to be adapted to meet the needs of children who might still be developing grade-level skills. But a primary concern that we have for our learners that surrounds curricular delivery is that they're too rarely exposed to grade-level content and integrated-level texts. And so, part of our focus in this webinar on exposing children to appropriately challenging grade-level text is that it is within those texts that they are exposed to the ideas that are at the level that they can comprehend given their developmental age. Despite the fact that a student might not be able to independently access the language of a complex text, we encourage teachers to expose them to those texts and support them to read and comprehend them, because that is where the rich content information is that they need to master. That's a brief foray into Hallmarks 1 and 3, focused on texts and writing in instruction and curriculum. In our second webinar, we tackle the other additional hallmarks, offering leaders guidance into implementing these in curriculum and instruction, including through the use of school-wide protocols. Thank you for joining us to learn about advanced literacies in curriculum and instruction. For more on this topic and the next generation P12 learning standards, please refer to a series of briefs posted for download from the New York State Education Department website. And additional resources for deeper study and learning can be found at the websites listed on the screen.